A sleepy summary presents a double feature, a Game of Thrones, a Clash of Kings, a Song of Ice and Fire, by George R. Martin. The world you're about to drift through is very old, older than its kings remember, older than the songs the singers sing, and it is very cold in the places where this story begins. There is a wall there, somewhere in the far north, an impossibly massive structure of ancient ice, blue-white and enormous, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other, hundreds of feet high, older than any kingdom now living. Men have guarded the wall for thousands of years, and they call themselves the Night's Watch, and they are mostly forgotten by the people south of it. Most people south of the wall do not worry much about what lives beyond it. They should. The story opens in the dark, in the wild, cold wilderness north of the wall, a place called the Haunted Forest, a name that tells you everything you need to know about how warmly regarded it is. 3 men of the Night's Watch are out on a ranging, which means they have ridden beyond the safety of the wall to have a look around. Their leader is Sir Waymar Royce, a young lordling of about 18, handsome and haughty in his black wool and fine riding gear, the kind of young man who joined the watch because it seemed adventurous and who has not yet had the adventure he expected. With him a guard, an old veteran ranger with decades behind him, and Will, a former poacher turned sworn brother. They have found something strange. A camp of wildlings, the people who live beyond the wall, arranged in a peculiar pattern in the snow. But the bodies are gone by the time Will scouts ahead. Then the White Walkers come. The White Walkers, called the others in the old stories, are tall, pale, cold things, neither quite alive nor quite dead, moving through the dark with a kind of terrible grace, carrying swords that seem to be made of crystal or ice or something else entirely. Sir Waymar draws his steel and tries to fight one, which is either very brave or very foolish, and the answer turns out to be very foolish, because his sword shatters and he is cut down. Guard runs. Will watches from a tree and then finds himself looking into the open eyes of Sir Waymar's corpse, which is no longer simply a corpse. And then the story moves south quickly, as if the narrative itself is glad to get away from there. South of the wall, far south, across the long stretch of northern Westeros known as the North, there is a castle called Winterfell. Winterfell is everything its name suggests, a great grey fortress of granite and timber, its walls thick enough to sleep in, its towers draped in banners of grey and white showing a running grey direwolf. It is a cold castle, but not an unkind one. Hot springs run beneath it, so the rooms are warmer than the stone suggests, and there are godswoods, sacred groves with a great heart tree at the center, a weirwood with a red and weeping face carved into its pale bark, where the old gods of the north are still worshipped. Winterfell sits at the top of the Kingsroad, the long road that runs all the way south to the capital city, and it has been the seat of the Stark family for 8,000 years, more or less, which in this world is practically forever. Eddard Stark, called Ned by almost everyone, is the Lord of Winterfell and the Warden of the North. He is a man of perhaps 35, with a long solemn face and dark grey eyes, brown hair going slightly grey at the temples, built sturdy and solid like Winterfell itself. He is not handsome in any flashy way, but there is something trustworthy in his face, something that makes people believe whatever he says, which is both a strength and, as it will turn out, a vulnerability. Ned values honor above almost all things. He is a man who does what he believes is right even when it is hard, even when it costs him something, and this quality, which in a gentler world would be purely admirable, is in this world rather dangerous. He has a wife named Catelyn, once a Tully of Riverrun, dark-haired and sharp and fierce in a very quiet way, the kind of woman who manages everything and shows very little of what she is managing. They have 5 children together. The eldest is Robb Stark, 14 years old, already carrying himself like the heir to a great house, with his mother's Tully colouring, auburn hair, blue eyes, and his father's steadiness. Then Sansa, 11, golden and lovely, and already dreaming of knights and songs, a girl who has absorbed every romantic story she has ever been told and believes them all. Then Arya, 9, Ned's daughter in face and spirit, dark and grey-eyed and absolutely uninterested in the life Sansa dreams of, far more interested in swords than in sewing. Then Bran, 7, whose greatest joy is climbing the walls of Winterfell, climbing the towers, climbing anything that can be climbed, much to his mother's terror. And then the baby, Rickon, only 3, still small enough that this story barely notices him yet. There is also a boy named Jon Snow, who is Ned's bastard son, which means he shares Ned's blood but not his mother's, and his mother is a secret Ned has kept for years. Jon has Ned's colouring, dark hair, dark eyes, and a reserve about him, a seriousness that comes from growing up always slightly on the outside of the family he loves. He is about 14. Bastards in this world carry surnames that mark their region of birth, Snow for the north, and they do not inherit, and they are not truly of the family. And Jon feels this keenly even though the Stark children love him and Ned treats him with all the care he treats his trueborn sons. There is also, at Winterfell, a man named Theon Greyjoy, who is technically a ward, which means he was taken as a hostage years ago to ensure his father's good behavior, and who has been raised alongside the Stark children without quite being one of them. The story properly begins for the Starks one morning when Ned goes to execute a deserter from the Night's Watch. The man, half-mad with fear, raves about white walkers and dead men walking, which the people of the South take as the ravings of a coward who ran from his post. Ned executes him cleanly and personally, because in the North, the man who passes the sentence swings the sword. That is the Stark way. On the ride home, the children find a dead direwolf in the snow, a she-wolf with antler wounds on her throat, and around her 5 pups still alive, and a 6th pup, white, with red eyes, an albino, found separately a little apart from the others. There are 5 Stark children and 5 pups and 1 bastard and 1 white oddity, and the symmetry is difficult to ignore. Ned is about to put the pups down when Jon quietly points this out, and Ned agrees to let the children keep them. Direwolves are the sigil of House Stark, and the children name their wolves Grey Wind for Robb, Lady for Sansa, Nymeria for Arya, Summer for Bran, Shaggy Dog for Rickon, and Ghost for Jon, the Silent White One. Not long after this, a great procession arrives at Winterfell. The king has come. King Robert Baratheon, first of his name, king of the Andalts and the first men, lord of the seven kingdoms and protector of the realm, was once a magnificent man, tall and black-bearded and powerful, the hammer of his age, the warrior who killed the last dragon prince in single combat and took a crown. That was 17 years ago. Now he is enormously fat, still with the black beard though heavily streaked with grey now, still with the great laugh and the great appetites, but the power is buried under all those layers. He is a king who does not especially like being king, who preferred war to rule, who misses the days when things were simpler. He loved a woman named Lyanna Stark, Ned's sister, dead these many years, and married a woman named Cersei Lannister instead, and has never been happy about the difference. Queen Cersei is extraordinarily beautiful in the specific way that makes people a little nervous. Golden hair, green eyes, features arranged with almost suspicious perfection. A smile that never quite matches her eyes. She is a Lannister of Casterly Rock, the richest family in the realm, and she knows her worth and the worth of her family, and is never likely to let anyone forget either. She rides in the procession surrounded by her 3 children, Prince Joffrey, 12, golden and handsome, and already slightly cold around the eyes, Princess Myrcella, 8, sweet-natured, and little Prince Tommen, 7, soft and gentle. And with the Lannister party come Cersei's brothers, Sir Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, arguably the most beautiful man in Westeros, golden-haired and brilliant and famous for having killed the king he swore to protect, and Tyrion Lannister, who is a dwarf, and who is therefore always the most interesting person in any room he enters, though rarely the most comfortable. Tyrion deserves a longer introduction because he is a person worth knowing. He is perhaps 24, and he has the Lannister gold hair and the Lannister green gold eyes, except one eye is black, the result of a genetic misarrangement. He is very short, with one leg slightly longer than the other, and a face that can most charitably be described as interesting. He is the youngest of Tywin Lannister's 3 children, and by far the most intelligent, and by far the most disliked by his father, who considers Tyrion's existence something between a disappointment and an embarrassment. In response to being disliked, Tyrion has read every book he could find, drunk every wine he could reach, and developed a wit sharp enough to draw blood, which he uses freely on anyone foolish enough to underestimate him, which is most people. He is not a villain. He is not a hero. He is something more interesting than either, a man who has been handed a bad set of circumstances and has made from them something surprisingly livable. Robert has come to Winterfell to ask Ned something. His hand of the king, his chief minister, his right hand, the man who runs the kingdom while the king hunts and drinks, Jon Arryn, has died. Jon Arryn raised both Robert and Ned as wards when they were boys, and Robert trusted him completely. Now he is gone, and Robert wants Ned to take his place. He wants Ned to come south to King's Landing, the capital, a city of 500,000 people built where the Blackwater Rush meets the sea, dominated by a massive fortress called the Red Keep, on top of which sits the Iron Throne, a monstrous seat forged from the swords of defeated enemies by the breath of a dragon, all jagged edges and uncomfortable angles, as if the throne itself is trying to remind whoever sits on it that ruling is supposed to hurt. Ned does not want to go. Ned loves Winterfell. He loves the North. He is suited to the North, steady, honest, cold weather. The South, as far as he knows, is full of politics and intrigue, and people who smile while thinking about how to use you. But Catelyn receives a secret message from her sister Lysa Arryn, Jon Arryn's widow, who has fled to her ancestral seat, the Eyrie, a castle improbably perched near the top of a mountain range in the Vale of Arryn, warning that Jon Arryn was murdered. Murdered by the Lannisters, she says. And if the Lannisters killed the Hand of the King, then the king himself is in danger, and Ned owes Robert too much to leave him alone with that danger. So Ned agrees to go, reluctantly, and to bring his daughters south, while Robb stays to govern Winterfell in his absence. Before the royal party departs, something terrible happens. Bran, who loves climbing, climbs one of Winterfell's abandoned towers, the kind of tower everyone is too busy or too sensible to visit, and comes through a window he shouldn't and sees something he absolutely shouldn't. Queen Cersei and her brother Jaime, together in the way that brothers and sisters are not supposed to be together. Jaime sees Bran. There is a moment, a pause, and then Jaime says something mild and dreadful and pushes Bran out the window. Bran falls. He survives barely, but he does not wake. He lies in his bed in a coma while the king's party makes ready to leave, and Catelyn refuses to go, and Ned goes south with a heavy heart and half his household, including his daughters and Jon's mentor Maester Luwin staying behind. An assassin comes in the night with a knife of Valyrian steel, rare and precious and extremely suspicious, and tries to kill the sleeping Bran, and Catelyn fights him off, and her hands are cut to ribbons, and Bran's direwolf Summer kills the man before any real harm beyond terror can be done. Catelyn leaves Winterfell to warn Ned of what she suspects. Meanwhile, on the other side of a narrow sea, across the water in a place called Essos, the great eastern continent, vast and strange and old in completely different ways than Westeros is old, a different story is beginning. The city of Pentos is a free city, one of several independent trading metropolises along the western coast of Essos, a place of wide avenues and merchant palaces, and deal-making as a primary art form. It is warm in Pentos and bright and smells of spice and money. In a manse, a large comfortable house, belonging to a wealthy and slightly slippery man named Illyrio Mapartes, who is enormously fat and enormously clever, and who has the kind of contentment that comes from having enough of everything that matters and enough sense to appreciate it. There live two pale-haired siblings. Viserys Targaryen is perhaps 22, silver-haired and violet-eyed in the Targaryen fashion, and he is angry. He has been angry for most of his life, which is understandable because he used to be a prince, and then he was a refugee, and the two conditions have not sat easily together in his mind. He believes the Iron Throne is his by right. His father was King Aerys II, the Mad King, whose pyromania and cruelty eventually provoked Robert Baratheon's rebellion 17 years ago. and he has spent his whole life in exile nursing that belief until it has grown into something obsessive and a little frightening. He calls himself the king and speaks of retaking the 7 kingdoms and calls his sister a commodity. Daenerys Targaryen, called Dany, is 13, just barely freshly 13, which is considered marriageable age in this world, though it strikes us as very young. She is small and silver-haired and violet-eyed like her brother, and she has been frightened for so long that she has begun to mistake the fear for normalcy. She has lived her whole life at Viserys' mercy and in Viserys' shadow, moving from city to city as his plans failed and his welcome wore out. And she loves him the way one loves someone who has always been there, even when that person is not particularly lovable. She dreams of something she calls the house with the red door, a peaceful place from her very early childhood, a garden, safety, and she wants warmth, and she is about to get a kind of warmth she did not expect. Illyrio has arranged a marriage for Daenerys. She is to be wed to Khal Drogo, who is the greatest of the Khals, the warlords of the Dothraki, a horse people who live on the vast central grasslands of Essos called the Dothraki Sea. Khal Drogo is an enormous man, bronze-skinned and black-eyed and black-haired, his hair so long it has never been cut in his life, braided and hung with bells that ring when he moves, because Dothraki warriors cut their hair only when defeated, and Drogo has never been defeated. He is terrifying and magnificent in the way that a force of nature is terrifying and magnificent, not cruel exactly, just utterly alien to everything Daenerys has known, operating by completely different rules. He has 100,000 riders. Viserys wants that army. The wedding happens in the Dothraki fashion, outdoors and loud and running all day, with eating and dancing and fights breaking out, because Dothraki weddings are considered poor events if fewer than 3 men die, which tells you something about Dothraki culture. Daenerys receives gifts: 3 petrified dragon eggs from Illyrio, stone-hard and gorgeous, patterned like scales in cream and gold, in black and scarlet, in green and bronze, beautiful objects that everyone agrees are merely beautiful objects, because dragons have been gone for 150 years, and these eggs are long dead. She also receives a kind advisor, a woman named Irri and a young girl, and most importantly an old knight named Ser Jorah Mormont, a tall exile from the north of Westeros, bare-shouldered and plain-faced and serious, who is there partly because he sold slaves once and was disgraced, and partly, it will emerge, because he is reporting back to Robert's spies. He will complicate his own assignment enormously by developing genuine loyalty to Daenerys. Back in Westeros, the great procession moves south on the King's Road. It is slow, a whole court moving through the countryside, and in the course of this journey small tensions build into something worse. Joffrey and Arya's friend Micah, a butcher's boy, have a confrontation on the banks of a river, Joffrey being casually cruel in the way he is always casually cruel, and Arya's direwolf Nymeria bites Joffrey when he threatens Arya. Arya then throws Joffrey's sword into the river, which is deeply satisfying and also deeply unwise. When the matter comes before the king and queen, Cersei demands wolf blood. Nymeria has been sent away. Arya threw stones at her to drive her off, knowing a direwolf that bit a prince would be killed. So Cersei demands that Lady Sansa's wolf be killed instead. Robert, who is weak in particular ways that matter, lets it happen. Ned, who insisted on executing the animal himself rather than leaving it to the Lannister men, does the deed, and Sandor Clegane, the Hound, Joffrey's bodyguard, a huge and frightening man with a face burned half away in childhood, who serves without much warmth and without much pretense, kills the butcher's boy on the road. This is the first of many things that Ned will carry south with him, a heaviness accumulating. They arrive at last at King's Landing. If Winterfell is stone and grey and cold and honest, King's Landing is everything else. It is enormous and crowded, pressed right up against the Blackwater Rush on one side and the harbour on another, its streets loud and smelling of fish and refuse and humanity packed too close together. The Red Keep sits above it all on Aegon's high hill, its walls painted the dusky rose red that gives it its name, and inside it every corridor has eyes and ears. Ned arrives and immediately feels the wrongness of the place, the way everything is negotiation and performance and subtext. He is not built for subtext. He meets the small council, the kingdom's governing body. Lord Peter Baelish, called Littlefinger, is the master of coin, small and neat and clever, a man who grew up on a tiny island and made himself indispensable through pure financial genius, who has known Catelyn since childhood, who loved her in the way that unrequited love can curdle into something more complicated with time. He smiles constantly and means almost nothing he says, which is enormously valuable in court, and which means he is not to be trusted at all. Lord Varys, called the Spider, is the master of whisperers, which means he runs the spies, which means he knows everything happening everywhere in the kingdom and most of what's happening outside it. And he has no family, no house, no clear allegiances, and the unnerving ability to appear and disappear as needed. He is plump and bald and powdered and scented and moves in soft slippers that make no sound. Grand Maester Pycelle, old and white-bearded and seemingly doddery, is more alert than he appears. Lord Renly Baratheon is the king's youngest brother, charming and handsome and well-liked. Lord Stannis Baratheon, the king's middle brother, is not here. He has retreated to his island castle of Dragonstone in a sulk, or what looks like a sulk but might be something else. Almost immediately, Ned begins to investigate what Jon Arryn was doing before he died. Catelyn arrives at King's Landing secretly, brought there by Littlefinger, who was supposedly helping, and tells Ned that the Valyrian steel dagger used by Bran's would-be assassin once belonged to Tyrion Lannister. This is actually not true, though neither Ned nor Catelyn knows that yet. The dagger belonged to Robert, who lost it wagering against Littlefinger, but the information has been directed at Catelyn with Littlefinger's help in ways that serve Littlefinger's purposes, which is a sentence worth reading twice. Catelyn leaves King's Landing and takes the Kingsroad toward home, but she stops at an inn and has the terrible luck to run into Tyrion himself, traveling with some knights. She does something dramatic. She calls on the men in the inn who are loyal to her father's house and has Tyrion seized on the spot, intending to bring him to justice at the Eyrie, her sister Lysa's mountain castle, for the attempted murder of Bran. Tyrion, who absolutely did not try to kill Bran and had never even seen that dagger, finds himself in a deeply unpleasant situation that he could not have predicted and cannot easily talk his way out of. The journey to the Eyrie is unpleasant, cold mountain passes, ambushes by mountain clans, a hired sellsword named Bronn who is rough and practical and funny in a completely unsentimental way, who keeps Tyrion alive more out of professional interest than sympathy. The Eyrie itself is extraordinary and terrifying, a series of 7 towers built at the top of a mountain, reachable only by a narrow switchback path, its moon door opening to a 600-foot drop, cold and austere and full of sky. Lysa Arryn is Catelyn's sister, and she has not worn her grief well. She is feverish and unpredictable, nursing her son Robert Arryn, a sickly boy of 6 who is still being breastfed and who has the kind of malicious helplessness that comes from being given everything and protected from consequence. Lysa wants Tyrion to confess, and Tyrion declines, and when she locks him in a sky cell, a cell with no outer wall, just a slanted floor and a great open invitation to fall, Tyrion decides to use the one weapon he has. He demands a trial by combat. In King's Landing, things deteriorate. Ned is following the thread of Jon Arryn's investigation, and it is leading somewhere that makes him uncomfortable. Jon Arryn, he discovers, was visiting blacksmiths and armories and making strange inquiries about a specific boy, Gendry, a boy who is apprenticed to a smith, who has Robert Baratheon's black hair and blue eyes and build, and who is clearly one of Robert's many bastards, though he doesn't know it. Why would the hand of the king care about a royal bastard? There are dozens of them. Ned starts looking at other royal bastards too, and the picture that forms is troubling. Robert's bastards look like Robert. Black hair, blue eyes, strong. But Robert's legitimate children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, are all golden. Lannister golden, every single one of them. And this fact, which seems like a genetic curiosity, is actually, Ned slowly realizes, a sword aimed at the foundations of everything. Meanwhile, Jon Snow arrives at Castle Black, the great fortress in the center of the wall where the Night's Watch is headquartered. Castle Black is somewhat less grand than its name suggests. It is old and drafty and understaffed, much of it in disrepair, the black stone worn and crumbling in places, the yard busy with men of various degrees of dangerousness and desperation. The Night's Watch takes men from the dregs of the realm, thieves, rapists, poachers, second and third sons who have nothing to inherit, and occasionally men like Jon, highborn boys who come voluntarily. Jon arrives expecting to be treated as the highborn he is, the son of a lord, trained with a sword, better than these others. He is quickly corrected. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont, called the Old Bear, is the commander of the Night's Watch, grizzled and grey and utterly serious, a man who knows his watch is undermanned and underfunded, and possibly facing an enemy no one south of the wall will take seriously. His maester is Aemon Targaryen, who is very old, well past 90, blind now, and who is the last surviving Targaryen in Westeros, except that nobody much thinks about him, because he has been at the wall so long he has become part of it. Jon makes friends. Samwell Tarly, enormously fat and enormously timid, the heir to a great house who was given a choice between taking the black and being killed by his own father for being an embarrassment, and who has chosen the black, and who is terrified of everything but has a core of quiet stubbornness that is easy to miss. Sam becomes Jon's closest friend, partly because Jon is the one who makes the other recruits stop bullying him. Jon trains and chafes and learns, and eventually takes his vows and is assigned as the Lord Commander's steward, which feels like a step down but turns out to be an education. Back in the South, Ned goes to the tournament that Robert has thrown in Ned's honor, a great jousting event, loud and colorful and expensive, which Ned thinks is exactly the wrong time to be spending money on tournaments. Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, is competing, a giant of a man, 8 feet tall and proportionally frightening, with a reputation for cruelty that is not at all exaggerated. He kills another knight's horse in a rage during the tournament and then turns on the knight himself, and it is only Gregor's own brother, the Hound, who intervenes. The Hound and the Mountain, Sandor and Gregor Clegane, hate each other with the specific loathing of a man for the person who burned half his face off when he was a child, and their confrontation at the tournament is one of many moments where this story's casual violence makes itself felt in the bones. At the same tournament, Ned meets a knight who appears in a mystery knight's armor, blue with crescent moons, and defeats Gregor Clegane honorably, and then vanishes before anyone can learn his identity. The mystery is not solved in this book, and is worth holding. More immediately, Ned finds himself one night summoned to a brothel by Littlefinger, who shows him another of Robert's black-haired bastards, a baby girl, and this confirms his growing thesis. He goes home and opens the book of royal lineages that Jon Arryn was reading before he died, and there it is. In the recorded history of House Baratheon, every single child has had black hair. Every single one for generations. And then suddenly Joffrey is gold. Ned decides to tell Robert. He writes out what he knows, seals it, and plans to give it to the king and let Robert handle it. But events move faster. Out on the King's Road, Tyrion's brother Jaime Lannister has heard about Catelyn's arrest of Tyrion, and he is furious. And he confronts Ned in the streets of King's Landing with a company of Lannister men, and they fight. Ned's guard is killed around him, and then Ned himself goes down when one of Jaime's men puts a lance through his thigh. Jaime rides away, disgusted, not quite willing to kill the hand of the king in the streets of the capital, even in his rage. And Ned is left in the street with a shattered leg, learning that the cost of honor is sometimes paid in flesh. While Ned is recovering, Robert goes on a hunt. He goes hunting a lot. He goes hunting on this particular occasion and comes back strapped to a litter, gored by a boar, dying. There is a widespread suspicion, later confirmed, that his squire was encouraged to keep refilling the king's wine on the hunt, which would explain why a man who was once the greatest warrior in Westeros was done in by a boar. Robert, dying, dictates his will and wants Ned to serve as regent until Joffrey comes of age. Ned, who cannot tell Robert the truth now without destroying everything while Robert lies there dying and in pain, writes down the name of Robert's true heir, which is not Joffrey, who is not his son, as the rightful heir instead of Joffrey's name deliberately. He seals this will and waits. Ned has a chance. Renly Baratheon comes to him secretly and offers 100 swords and a plan to seize Joffrey before the Queen can move. Ned refuses. It feels like theft, taking a boy by force in the night. He goes instead to Cersei and shows her that he knows, and gives her the chance to flee with her children before Robert dies. This is the noble thing to do. It is also, in the cold mathematics of survival, the wrong thing to do. Cersei says nothing useful and does nothing useful, and then Robert dies and the moment passes. Ned moves to take control of the situation through legal means. He presents his sealed orders from Robert to the council, but the captain of the city guard, Janos Slynt, has been bought by Littlefinger and Littlefinger himself, who Ned had trusted on the basis of Catelyn's childhood connection to him, smiles pleasantly and puts a knife at Ned's throat and says the words that should have been obvious all along, the words that sum up everything Ned should have learned about this city. I did warn you not to trust me. Ned is arrested. His household is slaughtered in the Red Keep's corridors, men he brought south from Winterfell, men who had served him faithfully. Joffrey is crowned king. Cersei rules through him. Sansa, still in King's Landing, is kept as a hostage. Arya escapes into the city with the help of her water-dancing sword teacher, Syrio Fall, a slight Braavosi who taught her to move like water and who makes his last stand against armored knights with a wooden practice sword, which is hopeless and also in its own way magnificent. Arya escapes. Sansa does not. In the Eyrie, Tyrion's trial by combat plays out. The champion Lysa provides against him is a man named Ser Vardys Edgen, a competent knight in full armor who moves slowly. Bronn, who fights for Tyrion, fights without honor, which is to say he fights to win, which means he moves and dodges until Ser Vardys is exhausted inside all that steel, and then kills him efficiently. The laws of the Eyrie say Tyrion must be set free, and so he is set free, allowed to go down the mountain with Bronn, which is not exactly a warm send-off, but is better than the Sky Cell. They find the Mountain Clan ambushes again, and Tyrion makes them an offer. He is a Lannister, which means he is very rich, and he will pay them, and he will get them proper weapons if they follow him. They follow him. It is the first time we see Tyrion making a deal out of pure pragmatism and having it work beautifully, which is something he will do many times. In the East, Daenerys is slowly becoming something. The key turning point comes when the Dothraki Khalasar, the Horde, all 100,000 of them, arrives at a sacred city called Ves Dothrak, the city of stallions, the one city the Dothraki do not burn, set in a shallow valley among the Dothraki Sea. Here the widows of dead carls, the Dosh Carline, old women in dark robes, maintain a kind of holy neutrality, reading futures and keeping customs. Here Daenerys eats the raw heart of a stallion as a ritual of the Carline, to divine the fate of the child growing inside her. She is pregnant. The child will be a boy. The child will be the stallion who mounts the world, a conqueror of impossible proportions, according to the Dosh Carline. Daenerys finishes the heart without gagging, bloodied and fierce, and something in her has shifted. She has stopped being afraid. She has started becoming whatever she is becoming. She has also grown genuinely fond of Drogo, which surprised her. He is not tender in the way songs describe tenderness, but he is steady, and once she learned to ask for what she wanted, once Ser Jorah told her that a queen rides rather than being ridden, she discovered that Drogo will give her what she asks for. He calls her the moon of his life. She calls him her sun and stars. It is a real thing, whatever it is, not comfortable and not like anything she ever imagined, but real. When an assassin arrives in V's Dothrak, sent by Varys on King Robert's orders, because Robert is terrified of the Targaryen resurgence, and nearly poisons Daenerys with a cask of wine, Drogo is so enraged that he makes a vow to give Daenerys the Iron Throne, to cross the narrow sea, to conquer Westeros for their son. He will do this. He promises it in front of the whole Khalasar, loudly, and the Khalasar roars. The bells in his hair ring and ring. And then, because this story gives and takes with equal frequency, on the raid into a settled people called the Lazarene, where the Dothraki take slaves and plunder to fund their crossing, Drogo is wounded. A shallow wound, a cut across the chest from a man he killed, nothing a great warrior should concern himself with. But Daenerys insists he be treated properly, and she allows a woman named Mirri Maz Duur, a godswife, a healer of the Lazarene whose village was destroyed by the Dothraki today, to treat him, because Mirri knows medicine the Horse Lords do not. This is compassion, and it will cost Daenerys everything she currently has that she loves. Mirri Maz Duur is not inclined toward gratitude. The wound festers. Drogo grows sick, then feverish, then so bad that he falls from his horse, which among the Dothraki means he is as good as dead, because a Khal who cannot ride is not a Khal. The Khalasar begins to fragment, and Daenerys is desperate. She goes to Mirri Maz Duur and asks her to use the blood magic she knows, the dangerous kind, the kind that uses life to pay for life, to save Drogo. Mirri Maz Duur agrees. There is a ritual. Blood magic requires a death to power it, and the price is a life for a life. And this is true, though not in the way Daenerys intends. The life that pays is her unborn son. Daenerys goes into labor during the ritual, in a tent full of shadows doing terrible things, and her women bring her out, but it is too late and too strange. And when the baby comes, he is monstrous, dead, something that was taken by whatever lives in the blood magic space. Drogo lives, but only barely, lying still and staring, breathing but not present, a living corpse with open eyes that see nothing. Mirri Maz Duur explains, this is what was bought, a life for a life. Drogo breathes. He is not alive in any way that matters. Daenerys eventually smothers Drogo herself, because leaving him like that is not love and is not mercy, and she is learning the difference. Then she builds his funeral pyre, a great fire, and places the dragon eggs on it, and Miri Maz Dua on it, and walks into the fire herself, and everyone watching expects her to die, and this is the last thing they expect. She does not die. The fire burns all night. In the morning, in the ashes, Daenerys stands unburnt, hair gone, skin perfect, 3 baby dragons crawling on her shoulders and arms, mewling and smoking, born from those petrified eggs because whatever lives in the fire woke them. She has lost a husband. She has lost a son. She has lost a horde. She has gained 3 dragons and a company of the Dothraki who stayed, who dropped to their knees in the ash. Ser Jorah, who stayed, who chose her over Robert, who has already been choosing her for some time without quite admitting it to himself, kneels too. The dragons are small, they are real. They are the first dragons in the world in 150 years. One is black and red, one is cream and gold, one is green and bronze. And whatever comes next for Daenerys will be shaped by what she has lost and by what she now carries. Back at the wall, a ranging comes back with something horrible. 2 dead men of the Night's Watch, found north of the wall, carried back to Castle Black. The men are dead but not quite settled. In the night they rise, the same dead things that killed Sir Waymar Royce in the prologue, animated now, cold and wrong, and one of them attacks the Lord Commander in his chambers, and Jon Snow is woken by Ghost, follows the sounds, and burns the dead thing with a lamp. He saves the Lord Commander. He is rewarded with the Lord Commander's own Valyrian steel sword, Longclaw, white-handled, and made of the extremely rare metal that it will become clear can kill White Walkers. Jon has saved the Lord Commander, but he has also seen the dead rise, and the Watch has seen it, and the question of what lies beyond the wall is becoming less theoretical. In King's Landing, Ned sits in a black cell. He is told that if he confesses, if he admits to treason against King Joffrey, his life will be spared. Varys visits him in the cell and tells him that Sansa's safety depends on his cooperation. Ned, who wants to die with honor, who wants to tell the truth one last time before the end, is asked to trade his honor for his daughter's safety. He is a man who values nothing above truth and honor, and this is the ultimate test of that value, because it turns out that honor costs more than he thought. Ned confesses. He stands at the great sept of Baelor, the great cathedral of King's Landing, its enormous dome rising against the blue sky, the steps crowded with every person in the city who could find a spot, and he confesses his treason publicly, naming Joffrey the rightful king. Sansa is there, Joffrey is there, Cersei is there. The High Septon is there. Ned has been promised exile to the Night's Watch in exchange for this. The crowd jeers and the sept rises golden in the sun, and Ned makes his confession in a voice you can barely hear. Joffrey orders his head. This is the moment, if you are reading this story for the first time, where everything changes, not just what happens in the plot, but your understanding of what kind of story this is. Main characters do not die in Chapter 1. Moral centers do not fall. The good man with the values the narrative has built its first half on does not get executed at the behest of a 12-year-old king in front of a crowd. Except here, in this story, he does. Cersei protests. Sansa protests. Joffrey overrides them both, and Sir Ilan Payne, the Silent King's justice, who has no tongue, who is built entirely for this office, swings the sword, and Ned Stark's head falls, and his daughter watches from the steps. And that is the end of Eddard Stark. Arya, who was in the crowd, is found by a man named Yoren, an old Night's Watch recruiter who has some connection to the Watch and some loyalty to the Starks, who grabs her and holds her head against his chest so she cannot see, and cuts her hair off right there and names her Arai, a boy. He is taking a party of recruits north to the wall, and she is now one of them, a boy named Arai, and she has Needle, her small sword, the one Arya gave her, that she has hidden all this time, and she leaves King's Landing disguised and alone among strangers, which is not safety but is survival. In the north, the realm begins to tear. When news of Ned's arrest reaches Winterfell, Robb Stark, 14 years old, his father's son in every way that matters, calls the banners. He is told no, this is too rash, too quick. He calls the banners anyway. From all over the north they come. The Glovers, the Umbers, the Greatjon, a massive enormous man who is the Lord of Last Hearth, who arrives bellowing and who when Robb overrules him at dinner draws a knife, and Grey Wind bites off 2 of his fingers, and the Greatjon roars with laughter and says this boy's wolf has more courage than half his army, and pledges his full support, because the North has a particular kind of person in it. All the lords come. Maester Luwin at Winterfell counsels, and Catelyn rides south to meet her son at the twin castles of House Frey, straddling the only ford of the Green Fork of the Trident, owned by Lord Walder Frey, an ancient, unpleasant, shrewd old man who has never committed to anything before the winner was decided, who extracts a terrible price for crossing. Robb must marry one of Walder's daughters after the war. Robb agrees because he has to cross the river and the Frey's price is paid. Robb marches south. He faces the Lannister army, his father's captor, the Army of the West, led by various Lannister commanders, and he wins. He wins because he is not the general anyone expects him to be, because he uses the direwolf, because he does the unexpected thing again and again. At the Battle of the Whispering Wood, in a damp and foggy forest at night, the Stark cavalry falls on Jaime Lannister's forces and takes Jaime himself prisoner. And in the south, Catelyn's brother Sir Edmure Tully and the Tully forces hold, and the Western Lannister army under old Lord Tywin Lannister himself, Tyrion's father, Cersei's father, the most powerful lord in the realm, a tall, cold man with no sense of humor and no tolerance for failure, finds itself outmaneuvered. Tywin Lannister is not beaten. Tywin Lannister is never quite beaten, but he is checked. The Northern Lords, assembled in the ruins of an ancient castle called the Twins after the crossing, in a candlelit hall with their sword hands around cups of Frey wine, speak of what comes next. Robb is 14. He sits at the head of the table and the lords debate. Stannis Baratheon has the best claim to the throne by law, they say, but Stannis is cold and distant, and the North does not love him. Renly has declared himself king in the south and has a large army and a great deal of charm. The Greatjon stands up, loud and scarred, and says something no one has said for 300 years. He does not want a king from the south. He does not want any southern king. He draws his sword and points it at Robb and says the only king he will bow to is the king in the north. And then the other lords draw their swords, one by one, and the hall fills with voices, and 14-year-old Robb Stark becomes the king in the north, because that is what the north wants, because that is what it has always wanted, and 300 years of southern governance may have suppressed the wanting, but it never killed it. Robb Stark is the king in the north. His father is dead. The war has started. There are 3 claimants to the Iron Throne, and the realm is fracturing. And beyond all of it, far north, beyond the wall where the Night's Watch is already being stretched thin, the dead are rising. And that is where the first book ends. Not tidily, not with a bow. The threads are still loose, and the world is still spinning, and the characters you have come to care about are scattered across a continent, some of them alive and some of them dead, and some of them burning and some of them climbing, and some of them just a girl with a sword and a secret on a road north in a country that does not know her name. There is a wall in the north, and the dead are stirring behind it. There are dragons for the first time in 150 years, small and hungry and real. There are kings claiming thrones and lords choosing sides and children trying to survive in a world that has just made very clear it does not adjust its cruelty based on age. There is a boy who may be the key to everything, lying in Winterfell with a broken spine, and a wolf named Summer curled at his feet, still dreaming the dreams that the falling gave him, dreams where he sees through eyes in the trees, dreams where he flies. There is a comet in the sky, a long red comet, sliding across the heavens like a crack in the world, visible from everywhere, interpreted differently by everyone. In the north they call it the Red Sword, the sword that was promised, a sign from the old gods. In the Riverlands they call it the Sword of the Lannisters, red as the lion's colors, blood on the sky. In the east, across the narrow sea, Daenerys and her tiny ragged band of followers call it the Herald of Dragons, a burning confirmation that they are going the right way. The small folk everywhere call it the King's Comet, but they cannot agree which king. Every king in the realm has a follower who says the comet belongs to him. There are a great many kings in the realm now. This is the problem. 5 kings. When a clash of kings begins, 5 men claim the right to rule, and the realm is tearing itself apart along the seams of their ambitions. There is Joffrey, the boy on the Iron Throne, golden and cruel, backed by Lannister gold and Lannister swords. There is Robb Stark, the king in the north, who does not even want the Iron Throne, only justice and independence. There is Renly Baratheon, Robert's youngest brother, who wants the throne because he thinks he would be good at it, which is a more honest reason than most. There is Stannis Baratheon, Robert's middle brother, who wants the throne because it is his by right of succession, which is the correct legal answer and the coldest emotional one. And far to the east, barely relevant yet, but becoming more so by the chapter, there is Daenerys Targaryen, who has dragons, 5 kings, 1 realm, and a red comet drawing a line across the night, as if pointing toward the inevitable bloodshed of it all. Sleep through the politics if you can. Keep your ears open for what's coming from the north. Let us begin at the wall, because the wall is where the story is largest and coldest and most ancient, and starting there has a way of putting everything else in proper perspective. Castle Black is the Night's Watch's main fortress, grey and austere and draughty, set into the wall itself, the ice rising behind it impossibly high. Jon Snow is here, 16 now, sworn to the Watch, the Lord Commander's personal steward, which means he carries the old bear's messages and fetches his meals, and has better access to the commander's thinking than almost anyone else in the castle. He has Ghost, his white direwolf, and Longclaw, the Valyrian steel sword given to him after he saved the Lord Commander's life, and he has Sam Tarly, his fat and frightened and quietly brilliant friend, and he has the restlessness of a boy who feels he ought to be doing something more. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont, the old bear, weathered and grey and absolutely serious about the threat beyond the wall in a way that nobody south of it is taking seriously enough, has decided to ride north with a great ranging, not a small scouting party. A real expedition, 300 men of the Watch, riding deep into the lands beyond the wall to find out what has become of Benjen Stark, Ned Stark's brother and the Watch's first ranger, who went ranging and never came back. Also to find out where Mance Rayder is. Mance Rayder is a former crow, a former man of the Night's Watch, who deserted his vows, went beyond the wall, and somehow convinced the wildling people, who have historically been incapable of agreeing on anything, to follow him as one. He calls himself the King beyond the wall. He has an army. He is gathering it. Nobody south of the wall has thought hard enough about why 100,000 wildlings might suddenly want to come south all at once. But the answer, if you listen to the oldest stories, is very cold and very dead and very patient. The ranging rides out. Jon rides with it. They go first to the holdfast of a wildling man named Craster, which is a grim and isolated place deep in the snowy wilderness north of the wall, a low wooden longhouse surrounded by a muddy yard, smelling of smoke and animals and worse things. Craster is a broad, rough, unpleasant man with many wives, all of whom are also his daughters, in a cycle that doesn't bear examining too closely. He deals with the Watch when it suits him, and with the others when it suits him better, and it gradually becomes apparent that the sons he fathers on his daughter wives are left out in the cold as offerings, and that the others take them. He is tolerated by the Watch because he provides shelter and information, and the Watch is too stretched thin to afford the luxury of morality right now. Jon observes all of this and hates it, and is told, essentially, to hold his tongue. South of the wall, in the great northern castle of Winterfell, Bran Stark is learning to live in a body that will not work properly. He is 8 now, and he has been awake since the fall, since Jaime Lannister pushed him from that tower window, but his legs are gone, feeling and function both, and he will never walk again. He is carried everywhere in a basket on the back of a large, gentle, simple-minded boy named Hoda, who is the stable boy's son, who is perhaps 6.5 feet tall, and whose entire vocabulary consists of the single word Hoda, which he says in various tones that communicate more than you might expect. Hoda carries Bran with great patience and great care. Bran's wolf Summer is always near him now, and Bran has discovered something strange and private about himself. He can slip into Summer's mind when he sleeps. He dreams through the direwolf's senses, the sharper smells, the different colors, the way the world opens up when experienced through 4 feet and a wolf's attention. These are called warg dreams, and Bran doesn't have a name for what he is yet, but there is a name. He is a warg, a skin changer, one of those rare people who can inhabit the minds of animals. He has these wolf dreams, and he has other dreams too, stranger ones, where he seems to see through the eyes of the weirwood trees, where he feels the roots of the heart tree wrapping around something ancient. There is something at the bottom of those dreams that seems to be looking back at him. Winterfell has a new presence now, Osha, a wildling woman who came south with a raiding party in the first book and was taken prisoner and has been put to work in the castle kitchens. She is rangy and practical and has a directness that comes from having survived things that would have killed most people. And she tells Bran things about the world beyond the wall in the matter-of-fact tone of someone who grew up with that world as a neighboring reality rather than a legend. She is not cruel. She is not kind. She is useful, and in this story that is its own form of virtue. Also at Winterfell, Maester Luwin, the castle's grey-robed maester, a learned man, small and round-shouldered, who carries the weight of advising the household with the tired patience of someone who has been doing it for decades. And Sir Roderick Castle, the white-haired master-at-arms, steady and loyal, and not built for the politics unfolding around him. And Bran's little brother Rickon, now 4, who senses the wrongness of everything even without being able to name it, whose wolf shaggy dog is increasingly wild and difficult, and the absence of Robb, who is in the south making war, and the absence of Ned, who is dead. Let us go south now to the Stormlands, to a castle called Storm's End, a massive round drum of a fortress on a cliff above the sea, old beyond memory, built according to legend by Durin Godscreef, the first king of the Stormlands, who built 6 castles that the sea god destroyed, and then built a 7th that stood. And the 7th is this one, huge and brooding and surrounded by the crash of waves. Here in a great pavilion erected on the fields before the walls, Renly Baratheon holds his court. Renly is perhaps 21, and he is the most physically magnificent of the Baratheon brothers, tall and dark-haired, with his brother Robert's good looks on a frame that hasn't yet been softened by indulgence, possessed of an easy charm that makes people want to follow him. He has a great army, 100,000 swords, because the lords of the Reach, the fertile, wealthy heart of Westeros, the bread basket of the realm, and the lords of the Stormlands have both flocked to his banner, because Renly has the gifts that make men follow. He is young and charming and feels like a king in a way that his grim, older brother Stannis never has. He has also made a very sensible political marriage to Margaery Tyrell, the daughter of Lord Mace Tyrell of Highgarden, which is how he got the Reach behind him. Margaery is perhaps 16, brown-haired and bright-eyed, and already very good at being publicly gracious. which is a skill not everyone is born with. Catelyn Stark arrives at Renly's camp as an envoy from her son, hoping to secure an alliance, Robb in the north, Renly in the south, a coordinated war against the Lannisters. She finds the camp enormous and festive, more like a tournament than a war, which makes her uneasy. And she finds someone unexpected, her daughter Brienne of Tarth. Except Brienne is not her daughter, though Catelyn will treat her almost as one as their stories braid together. Brienne is perhaps 18, extraordinarily tall as most knights, taller than many, with a broad, plain face and pale eyes that look at the world with a directness that most people find disconcerting. She is not beautiful by any standard the court uses. She is perhaps the finest fighter in Renly's army. She wants nothing but to serve with honor, and she has pledged herself to Renly's Rainbow Guard, his personal guard, and she loves him with a faithfulness that is completely pure and completely hopeless, and completely in character for who she is. Also at Renly's camp, traveling separately, is Stannis Baratheon's envoy, a woman named Melisandre, the Red Woman, a priestess of a god called Arlor, the Lord of Light, who has come from the ancient eastern city of Asshai. She is tall and striking, with deep red hair and red eyes, always dressed in crimson, always burning with some inner certainty that makes ordinary people slightly uncomfortable. She has attached herself to Stannis and convinced him that he is the chosen one of Arlor, Azor Ahai reborn, the hero of ancient prophecy who once saved the world from darkness and is needed again. Stannis is a man who has spent his life doing his duty and receiving no credit for it, and having someone tell him he is cosmically significant has done something to him that duty alone never managed. Stannis himself is at his island castle of Dragonstone, a volcanic fortress on a small island at the mouth of Blackwater Bay, built of dark stone and carved all over with dragon shapes, sinuous, scaled, every wall and doorway framed by stony dragons, because Dragonstone was built by Targaryens and Targaryens had dragons and did not let you forget it. It is a cold, brooding, unhappy place even on warm days, which there are not many of on a windswept volcanic island. Stannis fits it exactly. Stannis Baratheon is perhaps 35, with Robert's dark hair going grey and a jaw so permanently clenched with suppressed irritation that his teeth are reportedly worn down from grinding. He has a soldier's body and an accountant's mind, rigidly precise, utterly fair, completely humorless. The kind of man who cannot let a slight pass unremarked and cannot overlook an injustice, even when overlooking it would be politically convenient. He knows the truth about Joffrey, that Joffrey is Jaime Lannister's son, not Robert's, and therefore has no claim to the throne, because Jon Arryn was investigating this before he died and told Stannis, and Stannis sent ravens telling every lord in the realm, and nobody cared, because Stannis is not the kind of person people want to follow into war even when he is completely right. His claim is the best, and his personality makes it the hardest to support. He has Davos Seaworth, though, and Davos is worth knowing. Davos is a former smuggler who once saved Storm's End during a siege by smuggling onions and salted fish under the Lannister blockade, which kept the garrison alive, which includes Stannis. Stannis rewarded him with a knighthood because it was the right thing to do, and punished him by cutting off the first joint of 4 fingers on his right hand, because smuggling was a crime, and doing the right thing does not undo past crimes, not in Stannis's strict moral universe. Davos wears the knuckle bones in a pouch around his neck, a reminder of who he is and where he came from. He is perhaps 40, weathered from years at sea, steady and plain-spoken, and honestly devoted to Stannis in the way that a man devotes himself to something that demands everything and gives clarity in return. He is deeply uneasy about Melisandre, and he is right to be. Melisandre does a thing at Dragonstone that unsettles everyone, Davos most of all. She takes Stannis to a cave beneath the castle, and there she gives birth, if birth is the right word, to a shadow. A creature made of darkness and purpose, slipping from her as if squeezed from her body, shaped vaguely like a man. A shadow assassin, formed of blood magic and the Lord of Light's fire, carrying Stannis's face in its darkness. Davos is there. He sees it. It goes out into the night. It goes to Storm's End, which Stannis's brother Renly holds against him. On the night the shadow comes to Storm's End, Catelyn is there with Brienne in Renly's tent, negotiating the last details of an alliance that might yet hold the realm from total chaos. And then the candles go out, and the shadow comes through the tent wall like smoke through a keyhole, and it is shaped like Stannis, and it takes Renly by the throat, and Renly is dead before he can make a sound, just like that. The king who had 100,000 swords and a great laugh and a lovely queen, and everything needed to be loved, gone, in a shadow's moment, in the dark. Brienne, who was the only one with Catelyn, is immediately and obviously the most likely suspect. She was there, she had access, no one saw the shadow. She would be killed for it if she stayed. Catelyn tells her to run. They flee together through the camp in the chaos that follows Renly's death, and Brienne swears herself to Catelyn then and there in the dark, a fierce and simple oath to protect her, because Brienne needs something to be loyal to, and Catelyn needs protection, and these two forms of need fit together neatly. They ride away, and Renly's great army shifts like water. Some of the Stormland lords go to Stannis, because Stannis is the remaining Baratheon, and some go to the Tyrells, because the Tyrells are not going to let their careful positioning go to waste, and Margaery Tyrell will find a new king to marry soon enough. The 100,000 swords scatter and reform in new configurations, like starlings changing direction all at once. In King's Landing, the capital is anxious. Tyrion Lannister has arrived as Hand of the King, sent by his father Tywin to do what Cersei has been failing to do: manage Joffrey, manage the court, manage the war. Tyrion has never been given anything so large to manage. He is finding it suits him. He moves with characteristic energy. He identifies the spies that each member of the small council has planted to report back to them: Pycelle for Cersei, Littlefinger for himself, Varys for Varys, by telling each one a different false secret and watching which secret surfaces where. He removes Janos Slynt, the corrupt commander of the City Watch, who helped the Lannisters during Ned Stark's arrest, by exiling him to the wall in the night quickly, before anyone can protest. He replaces him with Sir Jacelyn Bywater, a one-handed veteran he trusts marginally more. He has Littlefinger dispatched to the Eyrie to negotiate for Laesar Arryn's support. He navigates Sir C with the wariness of a man handling something that might bite. He also has a secret. He has brought with him, hidden in the city, a woman named She, who is his lover, a young woman of perhaps 18, originally a camp follower, quick-tongued and practical and warm, who has attached herself to Tyrion in a way that is part affection and part professional calculation, and over time becomes something more complicated. Tyrion has been told his entire life that no woman will ever love him for himself, only for what he can give them. He half believes it. He cannot quite stop hoping it is wrong. He installs She as Sansa's handmaiden to keep her close and hidden, which puts her right next to the girl who has become, against everyone's intentions, one of the most carefully managed political prisoners in the capital. Sansa Stark is 12 now, still in King's Landing, still engaged to King Joffrey, still very much a hostage, though everyone is careful not to call it that. She has learned, by raw necessity, to wear a face. To smile, to say the correct things, to perform the contentment of a high-born girl delighted to be betrothed to a king. She flinches inside. Joffrey is not simply unkind in private. He is cruel in public, deliberately, with a specificity that suggests he thinks cruelty is a pleasure rather than a vice. When news comes of Robb's victories in the Riverlands, Joffrey has Sansa brought to the throne room and beaten in front of the court, stripped of her cloak by Sir Meryn Trant, while Joffrey watches with satisfaction. The Hound, Sandor Clegane, Joffrey's sworn shield, gives her his cloak to cover herself with, which is not kindness exactly, but it is the closest thing to it that lives in the Red Cape's throne room. There is also a young man named Dontos Hollard, a drunk and embarrassing knight who Joffrey was about to have drowned in wine barrels on his name day, and whom Sansa cleverly saved by suggesting it was bad luck to kill someone on a king's name day. Dontos becomes, out of gratitude and some remnant of honor from a better version of himself, Sansa's secret ally. He tells her he will help her escape. She is not sure she trusts him, but she has very little else, so she meets him in the Godswood at night, in secret, and waits. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys is walking through a desert. The Red Waste is exactly what it sounds like. A vast, dry, sun-cracked emptiness between the places she has been and the places she needs to reach, red earth and red dust and merciless sun, and she is crossing it with perhaps 100 remaining Dothraki, all that is left of Drogo's Khalasar, the ones who stayed for her, and 3 baby dragons, and almost no food and less water. People and horses die on the crossing. She sends 3 riders in 3 different directions to find civilization and waits, which is one of the harder things a leader can do, waiting when the people around you are suffering. One of her riders returns, the others do not come back, with guides who take her to a city called Qarth. Qarth is one of the greatest cities in the world, and it shows. It sits at the edge of the Red Waste, where the land becomes green again. A walled city of extraordinary architectural extravagance. Spires and domes and palaces in every color, wide promenades. A harbor full of ships from every coast of the known world. It is a city of ancient wealth and enormous self-regard, the center of the trading world east of the free cities, and the men who rule it, the 13, the great merchant princes, meet Daenerys at the gate with interest and hauteur in equal measure. She is received into the household of a man named Zaro Exhone Daxos, one of the 13, a merchant of enormous wealth who was born in the Summer Isles and made himself indispensable to Carthene commerce through sheer determined ambition. He is tall and dark-skinned and elaborately dressed, his robes embroidered with scenes from his own life, his fingers heavy with rings, a man who has built his entire existence as performance and is very good at it. He offers Daenerys wealth. She needs it. She is also attended by a masked woman, Quaithe, from the city of Ashai, a shadowbinder who gives cryptic advice in prophetic riddles and never shows her face, and is either genuinely prophetic or very convincingly evasive, and possibly both. She tells Daenerys that to go forward she must go back, which is the kind of advice that sounds meaningless until suddenly it doesn't. Daenerys visits the House of the Undying, the ancient home of the warlocks of Qarth, the Undying Ones, a conclave of very old sorcerers who have extended their lives by drinking a blue liquid called Shade of the Evening until their lips and mouths are stained blue-black. Their great house is a peculiar architecture of hallways that shouldn't connect the way they do, rooms that shouldn't exist, time that moves strangely. The warlocks invite her because they want her dragons. Magic has been fading from the world for a century and a half, and the dragon's existence is making it stronger again, and the warlocks are growing in power they haven't felt in generations. Inside the House of the Undying, Daenerys walks through visions, her dead brother Rhaegar playing a harp, the Iron Throne in a ruined hall open to the sky and snow falling through the ceiling, a blue-eyed woman and a man she doesn't quite see who might be the beginning of everything that is coming. At the heart of it, the Undying Ones try to keep her, try to feed on her and the dragon's power, and one of the dragons, Drogon, burns them. Daenerys walks out. Arya Stark is on a road north, which is a very different kind of journey than walking through visions. She is 11 years old, and she is pretending to be a boy named Arai, and she is traveling with Yoren's recruits for the Night's Watch, a group of men and boys that includes genuine volunteers and a substantial number of people who chose the wall over execution, which means there are some genuinely dangerous individuals among them. She has Needle hidden. She has a list of names she recites to herself at night like a prayer, a list of people she wants to kill: Cersei, Joffrey, the Hound, Sir Ilyn Payne, Sir Meryn Trant, Polliver the Tickler. The list is partly anger management and partly ambition, and partly a way of keeping herself tethered to something real when everything around her is frightening and strange. Among the recruits are 3 prisoners in a black cart, men in iron cages, criminals. One of them goes by the name Jaqen H'ghar, which is most likely not his real name. He is a thin, pale-faced man with long hair of 2 colors, red on one side, white on the other, a striking accident of genetics or dye, who speaks in a distinctive third person and has the particular stillness of someone who has completely decided something about the world and is waiting for the world to catch up. He is a faceless man, though Arya doesn't know this yet, an assassin from the city of Bravos trained in the killing arts of the many-faced god. He does not seem like an assassin. He seems like a prisoner in a cart. These are not the same thing. Lannister soldiers attack the column. Yoren is killed. Arya frees the three prisoners from their cart before the fire reaches them. The Lannisters burn the cart. She opened the lock because she could not leave them to burn. This small act of mercy will have enormous consequences. The recruits are captured and taken to a place called Harrenhal. Harrenhal is the largest castle ever built in Westeros and also the most ruined, and the ruin is the point. It was built by a king named Harren the Black 300 years ago. Enormous towers, walls so thick armies could camp on the walkways, ambitious beyond any reasonable scale. And on the day it was completed, Aegon the Conqueror arrived with his dragons and simply burned it. Dragons can melt stone. The towers of Harrenhal dripped and fused and warped in the dragon fire, and now they stand in their melted shapes, frozen mid-flow, massive and wrong, inhabited but never repaired because the damage is too immense and too complete. It is an enormous monument to what dragons do to things that thought they were impregnable. It has passed through many hands since and seems to bring bad fortune to everyone who holds it. The small folk say it is cursed. They are not entirely wrong. At Harrenhal, the prisoners are put to work by a brutal man called Sir Amory Lorch, one of the mountain's men, and then the mountain himself, Gregor Clegane, the terrifying giant, takes over the castle. The prisoners are tortured every day. A particularly imaginative torturer called the Tickler uses a method involving a bucket and a rat that we do not need to describe in detail, and Arya watches and waits and feeds her list. Jaqen H'ghar comes to her in secret and offers her a gift. He owes her 3 deaths, one for each life she saved from the fire. She names the Tickler. She names Sir Amory Lorch. She considers her list very carefully for the 3rd name and eventually uses it in a way that is strategically brilliant. She names Jaqen himself and threatens to say the name aloud and get him killed unless he helps her free the northern prisoners being held in the dungeons. He helps. A small coup happens inside Harrenhal very quickly, very efficiently, and the Lannister men holding it are dead, and the castle belongs to the northern forces of Roose Bolton, who is Robb Stark's commander in the field, a pale and quiet and extremely dangerous lord of the Dread Fort. Before Jaqen leaves, for he must leave now, having done what he promised, bound for something larger than Harrenhal and something very different from what he appears to be, he offers Arya a final gift. He gives her a coin, iron, a strange coin not of any currency she recognizes. He tells her, if she ever needs him or needs what he represents, she should find a man from Bravos, any man of Bravos, and give him this coin and say the words Valor Morgulis. All men must die. She takes the coin. She does not yet understand what she is holding, but she is the kind of person who will figure it out when the time comes. At Harrenhal, under Roose Bolton's occupation, Arya becomes a cupbearer. and she learns to be invisible the way that useful servants are invisible, and she listens, and she learns more about the war by overhearing conversations at the table of lords than she would have learned in a year of being told things directly. This is one of the more unexpected educations in the book. A child learning strategy by pouring wine and keeping her face still. Roose Bolton himself is a study in understatement, a pale, soft-spoken, almost affectless man who makes every decision with the same quiet precision, who does not raise his voice and does not waste words, and who is followed by rumors that his hobby is flaying people, which is the sigil of his house, the flayed man, and which is not a comforting thing to know about the man holding your castle. Arya keeps her head down and waits for a chance to escape. North of the wall, Jon's ranging has reached a place called the Fist of the First Men, a hill of ancient rocks arranged by long-dead hands, where the Watch makes its camp and sends out patrols. Jon is sent out with a small group led by Cuchulainn Halfhand, a legendary ranger, half his sword hand lost to a wildling blade, who has survived beyond the wall longer than almost anyone, and who has the complete confidence of a man who has tested himself in hard places and not been found wanting. Cuchulainn takes Jon to scout the wildling's position, and they capture a wildling scout, a young woman named Ygritte, perhaps 18, with a short, tangled shock of red hair and a quality of absolute directness that is partly her personality and partly what happens when you grow up in a place with no patience for performance. She knows exactly who she is. She is not afraid of anything Jon represents. She tells him that he knows nothing, which is her assessment of him and also the line she will repeat throughout their long acquaintance, always said with what becomes increasingly like affection. Cuchulainn tells Jon to kill her. Jon cannot do it. He lets her go or she escapes. The exact mechanics are unclear, and Cuchulainn is not surprised. They press on and are eventually captured by a large force of wildlings. Cuchulainn has a plan. He picks a very public fight with Jon, accuses him of cowardice, dishonors him in front of the wildling witnesses, forces a duel, and lets Jon kill him. Dies by Jon's hand deliberately so that Jon can pass as a wildling turncloak, a man who abandoned his vows and joined the enemy and infiltrate Mance Rayder's army. It is the most severe request an officer has ever made of a subordinate, and Jon understands it fully only as Cuchulainn is falling. He kills his mentor. He becomes a prisoner. He asks himself whether he has actually turned his cloak or whether he is still loyal, and this question will remain genuinely open for quite some time, including to Jon himself. Back in the South, the war is sharpening. Robb Stark continues to win battles in the Riverlands, which is the great central region of Westeros, a place of rivers and small kingdoms and exhausted smallfolk who have been fighting over by every army that passes. His victories are real. He has captured Jaime Lannister. But winning battles is not winning a war, and the question of what Robb is actually fighting for, independence for the North, revenge for his father, or the Iron Throne itself, remains one that his mother Catelyn worries about, and that his lords debate, and that Robb himself navigates with more political instinct than his age suggests, but less than the situation requires. Catelyn, traveling with Brienne, makes a decision that will define her relationship with Robb for the rest of this book. She releases Jaime Lannister. She sends him south to King's Landing with Brienne as his escort, in exchange for a promise, not guaranteed, not confirmed, just a promise, that Cersei will return Sansa and Arya. Robb is furious when he finds out, because Jaime is the most valuable prisoner in the realm, the hostage that keeps the Lannisters cautious. Catelyn's reasoning is entirely maternal. She wants her daughters back. Her reasoning is also strategically catastrophic. Robb has her confined to quarters, essentially, and the Lords of the North look at her differently after this, and the cracks that were always there in the coalition get wider very slightly, and the very slight cracks are the ones that eventually become chasms. Also, Robb has done something else his mother does not know about yet. He was wounded in battle in the Westerlands, the Lannister heartland, and he was treated and housed by a woman named Jane Westerling, the daughter of a minor lord, a sweet and gentle young woman who nursed him through his fever and his grief over Ned's death. He slept with her, which in this world means he has dishonored her, which means honor demands marriage, which means he has married her in secret, which means he has broken his promise to Walder Frey to marry one of Frey's daughters. The Frey crossing, the bridge his army needs. This marriage is an act of genuine decency. He would not leave Jane dishonored, and it is also a political disaster of the most avoidable kind, and the lords who hear about it know what it will cost, and the Freys will not forget. In King's Landing, the war comes home. Stannis's fleet is approaching the city. He has the great Baratheon strength behind him, storm-hardened sailors and veteran soldiers, and King's Landing is a city of 500,000 people who will burn and loot and riot if the walls are breached. Tyrion has been preparing. He has done something clever and terrible. He has had the great harbour chains stretched across the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, and he has filled the river with ships not full of soldiers, but full of wildfire. Wildfire is the great alchemical secret of the Alchemists' Guild, a substance made by an obsessive process, bright green, volatile beyond any ordinary fire, that sticks to what it burns and cannot be put out with water and burns hot enough to melt stone. It was the Targaryens' weapon before dragons, their substitute for dragon fire, and Tyrion has had the guild produce it in enormous quantities, huge jars of it loaded into ships anchored in the river. When Stannis's fleet is inside the chain and the trap is sprung, when a burning ship is sent in among them, the wildfire ignites in a great green catastrophe. The Blackwater Rush burns, ships explode, men burn on the surface of the water, burning as they try to swim, burning as they try to drown themselves to escape it. It is spectacular and awful in the way of all great military moments. The strategy is brilliant, and the human cost is immense, and both things are true simultaneously. Stannis's fleet burns, but Stannis himself does not stop. He lands soldiers. His men scale the walls, and the battle moves from the water to the mud of the riverbank, and then to the streets of the city. The Lannister forces are almost overwhelmed. Joffrey, on the walls in his shining armor, gets frightened and lets Cersei send him inside, which was perhaps predictable, but which devastates morale at the precise moment when morale is everything. Tyrion leads the sortie himself, rides out through a hidden passage, leads men against Stannis' soldiers, is almost winning, and then is nearly killed when a member of the Kingsguard named Sir Mandon Moore tries to cut his face off. The wound is extreme. His nose is half severed, his face laid open, the scar that will define his appearance for the rest of his life carved in a single treacherous stroke. He is saved by his squire Podrick Payne, a small, quiet, almost comically unremarkable young boy who kills Sir Mandon Moore to save his lord, and says very little about it afterward, because Podrick says very little about anything. The battle is saved not by Tyrion's sortie, but by the arrival of a new force from the south. Lord Tywin Lannister himself, with the full Lannister army riding through the other gate, with the Tyrell forces beside him, because Littlefinger went to the Tyrells as Tyrion instructed and negotiated the alliance, offering Margaery's hand to Joffrey, and Margaery is not attached to any dead kings anymore. Stannis' army breaks and flees. The battle is over. Stannis escapes by ship back to Dragonstone, furious and humiliated. Melisandre was with him, and she watched the wildfire burn from the shore, and she said nothing encouraging. In the north, things go wrong very quietly. Theon Greyjoy goes home. He has been sent by Robb Stark as an envoy to his father. Robb needs ships, needs the Greyjoy fleet to support his war, and Theon is the natural messenger, being Lord Balon Greyjoy's son and the only representative of the family Robb has at hand. This seems sensible. It is not sensible. Theon has been a ward of the Starks since he was 10 years old, hostage for his father's good behavior after the Greyjoy rebellion, and he has spent a decade among people who treated him decently but never let him forget he was hostage and not son. He has spent 10 years being the almost Stark, the nearly brother, the boy who doesn't quite belong. He is going home to prove something, and the problem with proving something is that you need the proof to be dramatic. Pike is the Greyjoy seat, a castle of several towers built on sea stacks, connected by rope bridges over the crashing sea, grey stone above grey water, cold spray, gulls screaming. It is a cold and inhospitable place even to those who love it, and the Ironborn who inhabit it are cold and inhospitable people, proud of their hardness, worshippers of the drowned god who believe that what is dead may never die, and who define themselves by what they take rather than what they make. Lord Balon Greyjoy is Theon's father, gaunt and iron-haired and utterly unsentimental, who looks at his returned son and sees 10 years of soft living in the south and is not impressed. He is already making his own plans. He does not need Robb Stark's alliance. He sees an opportunity. Robb has taken his army south, which means the north is empty, which means the north can be taken. He names his daughter captain of his best forces and dismisses Theon as a message boy. Theon's sister, Asha Greyjoy, called Yara in the show, but here she is Asha, is everything Theon is not. She is capable and confident, ironborn to the bone, commanding her own ship and her father's respect in ways Theon never managed. When Theon was taken as a ward, she was left, and she grew up fully her father's daughter while Theon grew up as something harder to classify. She is not kind to Theon on his return, but she is honest, which in its own way is a form of respect. Theon denied the role he wanted, makes a decision that is simultaneously impulsive and strategically conceived and personally catastrophic. He takes a small force of Ironborn and captures Winterfell. The great castle of House Stark, almost emptied of defenders because Robb took the garrison south, falls to 24 men and a few boats because the defenses were not built for internal assault, and because Theon has the personal knowledge of someone who grew up inside the walls. Maester Luwin is taken prisoner. Sir Roderick Castle and the few remaining fighters are captured. Bran surrenders rather than let the small folk be killed. And then Bran and Rickon escape, with Osha, with the direwolves, with a boy named Hoda carrying Bran on his back, out through secret passages that only the Stark children know, tunnels under the castle that Theon doesn't know exist. They vanish into the night. Theon announces they have been recaptured. He announces they tried to escape again and were caught and executed. He hangs 2 small burned bodies from the walls of Winterfell and lets everyone believe they are the Stark boys. They are not the Stark boys. They are the children of a local miller, killed for this grim purpose, unidentifiable after burning. Theon makes himself a monster for a castle he cannot keep, and somewhere in the tunnel under Winterfell, Bran and Rickon and Osha and Hoda move north in the dark, the wolves padding silently beside them. Winterfell does not hold. The northern lords, furious at the desecration of their sacred seat, send forces. A Bolton army arrives, the forces of Roose Bolton's bastard son, Ramsay Snow, though what Ramsay is and what he does is a horror that this book only hints at. The Ironborn cannot withstand a siege. Theon's men knock him unconscious, promising to bring him home to ransom, and the Bolton forces enter Winterfell and burn it, and Winterfell burns. The great grey castle that has stood for 8,000 years, the heart tree in the godswood weeping red sap, the towers Bran used to climb, the hot springs that kept the stone halls warm, burning, burning, everything burning. By the time Maester Luwin crawls to the godswood to die by his own hand rather than a Bolton soldier's, the smoke is visible for miles. Sir Roderick Castle is dead. Winterfell is rubble. Bran, somewhere in the north, feels it, or Summer does. The wolf feels the burning of the home they love and dreams of smoke and dying stone, and Bran wakes in the dark with tears on his face and nowhere to go but forward, which is what he does. He is going north toward the wall. Osha knows the way, roughly. There is a person Bran has seen in dreams, a boy, a strange pale boy beyond the wall, and the dreams say this boy can help him understand what he is, what the wolf dreams mean, what the three-eyed raven is that keeps appearing in his sleep, perched in the heart tree, watching him with an eye that knows everything. He is going to find answers. He has no idea how far the answers are or how cold the road is, but he goes. By the end of the book, Tyrion wakes up from his near-fatal wounding to find the world rearranged around his absence. His father Tywin has ridden in as the savior of King's Landing and been named Hand of the King. The job Tyrion was doing brilliantly, the job that suited him better than anything he has ever been asked to do. he is thanked with a smaller set of rooms. Joffrey has rewarded the Tyrells with a feast and a betrothal. Cersei still hates him. She is still there, still his, and he is still not sure what she is. He has a scar across his face and very little credit for the battle he effectively won. This is where Tyrion always lives, doing the necessary thing, getting no acknowledgement, surviving. Sansa learns, the morning after the battle, that Joffrey intends to set her aside in favor of Margaery Tyrell. This should be relief. It is relief. But it is not freedom. She is still in King's Landing, still a prisoner, still a Stark in Lannister captivity, and Joffrey being cruel to someone else does not make her safe. Dontos Hollard still whispers to her in the Godswood. Littlefinger watches her from across rooms with a patience that is only slightly more comforting than a threat. She is not free. She is just facing a different cage. And at the wall, past the wall, beyond the fist of the first men, the ranging has heard its own destruction. The men left at the fist of the first men, the main body of the watch, the 300, are attacked in the night, between one chapter and the next, by the army of the dead. White walkers and the whites they raise and command, the dead men walking with their cold blue eyes, swarm the camp in darkness, and the survivors run south, screaming for the wall. Hundreds die, dozens make it. They run south, and the wall is so far, and the dead are behind them, and the horn sounds. One blast for rangers returning, 2 for wildlings, 3 for the others, and 3 blasts would mean the others are here, actually here, close enough to matter, and the surviving brothers run and run through the dark in the cold. The book ends there, essentially, in running. Everyone is running toward something or away from something or both. Arya has escaped Harrenhal and is running north, 3 companions from the watch heading home. Jon is going north with the wildlings, wearing a dead man's cloak of deceit. Bran is going north on Hoder's back in the dark. The watch survivors are running south. Daenerys is leaving Karth by ship with her 3 young dragons, heading west now toward Westeros, though it is still very far away. Robb is in the field, still fighting, and his marriage is a secret that will detonate eventually. Stannis is at Dragonstone, still angry, with Melisandre burning her fires and reading her futures in the flames. And up above all of it, the red comet has been and gone. It crossed the sky, and everyone read it differently, and maybe they were all right and maybe they were all wrong, and the comet did not belong to any of them. The sky above Westeros is dark now, clear and cold, and the stars are just stars, and winter is coming. It is always coming, and somewhere north of the wall the dead are waiting with endless patience for the cold to do its work. In the end, this sleepy summary, with its relaxing tone and warm glow, is not meant to replace something. It is meant to honor and point toward a much larger light. It is offered with care, and with the genuine hope that something in tonight's listening finds its way into you as an invitation. The whole book is waiting. The real depth lives there, in every word they chose, and every story they told, and every quiet idea they let breathe across a full page. Let this be the beginning of something you carry forward in the light of an ordinary tomorrow. And if this lamp has helped you in some way, a like keeps it burning for someone else who might need it too.